Hey, welcome to the channel. I'm Curtis Merriweather. I was named a game changer in 2020 by the White House Policy Advisor for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. And we built this page or this channel to provide government contracting content, business content for the entrepreneurial and the government contracting community. We have a great topic for you today. I often get the question, what is the difference between prime contracting and subcontracting? So today, I just want to highlight some things for you to consider. Now, you may hear folks encourage you to submit the proposal, and I'm not against that guidance. However, I need you to be aware of some of the implications when you are a prime. When you're submitting a proposal response to an RFP, that's request for proposal, or you're submitting a quote RFQ, you're placing yourself in a prime contracting position. And that is great. However, I need you to be aware of what accompanies that, because I think oftentimes people just are not aware, and that's okay, because we're here to increase your knowledge in this area. So a prime contractor is a corporate entity. Now, I recommend that when you do business with the federal government, that you take the time to properly do a proper corporate formation. So when I say corporate formation, I'm talking about actually becoming a corporate entity, whether that's an S corp, which is what I recommend, or an LLC. But talk to your accountants and your legal professionals to find the right type, right organizational structure for you and what it is that you're trying to do. But it's a corporate, so a prime contract is a corporate entity that enters into a contractual relationship with another agency or organization. Because do understand that although on this channel we talk about federal contracting, but you can do contracting outside of the federal government or within the government contracting space. So just to make sure that our definition is inclusive, we're going to say that a prime contractor is a corporate entity, LLC, S corporation. You can do it as a sole proprietor. I don't recommend it, but you can. It's a corporate entity that enters into a contractual relationship with another organization or agency. Now, here's the kicker. The prime contractor is directly responsible for the success or failure of that contract. The prime contractor, say it again, is directly responsible for the success or failure of that contract. So, as a prime contractor, you need to understand the risk associated with the contract type. Each contract type has associated risk. And as a prime, you need to be aware of those risks and what they are and how to properly navigate them. Now, we can do a whole nother episode just on that. But you also, as a prime, need to adhere to any special clauses. A lot of newer companies, when they get into the space, they write proposals and they don't pay attention to the special clauses and preventions and special clauses that are presented in the RFP. And that's a no-no. So you need to understand what you're entering into. And I'll give you an example. One is SCA, that's the Service Contract Act. And there's some associated reporting requirements and some things that you need to do as a company to make sure that you are in compliance with that act, if that act applies to your contract. And each contract may have some different things, but I'm just giving you an example. There may be something called wage determination. You need to know what that is and how do you comply with that act if it's in your contract. If you're a large business, there's going to be a subcontracting plan, and if you're a large business, you should. Doesn't always happen, but you should comply with your subcontracting plan. And the reason that's I'm gonna put an asterisk there. The reason why that's a tough one is because the agencies have to enforce the subcontracting plan, and some agencies, quite frankly, do a better job of this than others. But that's probably the only one that's kind of gray. But the rest of them are non-negotiables. Now, as a prime contractor, your performance is going to be monitored and reported. Now, the reporting system that they use, it's going to be called CPARS. That's the Contractor Performance Appraisal System. So your past performance is going to follow you. That's why it's important to understand what you're getting into. Now, as a prime contractor, when you submit your proposal, whatever you write in that proposal is binding. So don't be putting things in there that sound good. Put in there things that you can actually do and adhere to, because that is a contractual document. If you are fortunate enough to win the contract, you're going to sign a standard form. And in that standard form, you're basically binding yourself to that contract based on what was outlined in your proposal. The proposal is what actually helped you win the effort. Now, if you don't adhere to what's outlined in your contract, you could find yourself in what we call termination for default. This is bad. You do not want termination for default. This basically means you did not adhere to what was outlined in your proposal and or the statement of work and the contractual documents that you read in preparation for your proposal submission. If you default for if you terminate for default, you can find yourself suspended. This means you're going to be inhibited from doing any work in the federal space as a prime or sub for a specific period of time. And if you, or worse, you can find yourself debarred, meaning you cannot do, as a prime or sub, you cannot do any work with the federal government for indefinitely, forever. You're done. And if it's egregious enough, you can find yourself in additional legal action. Okay, so being a prime is serious business. Now, I'm not saying this to scare anyone. At some point, we all have to jump into the prime space. However, we need to make sure we're doing it when we're ready. Make sure you're doing your prime contracting once you're ready. Okay. Now we want to talk about subcontracting. Subcontracting is when a corporate entity enters into a contractual relationship with a prime contractor. So remember, previously we talked about prime contracting, having a direct relationship with the procuring agency or organization. A subcontractor has an indirect relationship with the procuring agency or organization, because the prime stands between them and the procuring agency. So you have procuring agency, prime, and then subcontractor, if you want to look at it in kind of like a tiered structure. So the subcontractor provides indirect support towards contract fulfillment. They're not directly responsible, but they are responsible to their prime. But the federal government, we're talking about government contracting, the federal government is not holding them, or the government agents, it could be state government or local government, but the government agency is not holding the subcontractor directly responsible. The prime is going to hold the subcontractor responsible for what's outlined in their contract. You typically have a contract, you will have a contract with your prime that outlines the roles, responsibilities, and expectations. So if you default on that, you're gonna find yourself in a problem. But you should understand the risk associated with the contract type. So the prime contractor receives a contract type from the agency organization, and as a subcontractor, depending on a whole bunch of variables, which I'm not going to talk about now, you're going to get a contract type from your prime. And you need to understand the risk ramifications with that contract type. But again, they're going to hold you to it based on your statement of work of PWS. So the prime receives a PWS statement of work from the procuring organization. You as a sub are going to get a PWS or statement of work from your prime. So it just flows down. Okay. You must understand any kind of special provisions that's in your contract as a sub from the prime contractor. So you may, if the prime has SCA or Service Contract Act, you're probably going to see some SCA in your subcontract. They're going to flow those provisions down to ensure that everyone is moving in the same direction towards ultimate contract fulfillment, because it may not just be you. Effort's large enough, you could be several subs, and they want to make sure that the contract as a whole is moving in the right direction. Then you have termination for default as a sub. This is you have completely not conformed or not performed to what's outlined in your statement of work, and you probably severed your relationship with that prime contractor for a long time, if not indefinitely. Okay. So, unlike the prime, they are potentially debarred and suspended and potential legal action. As a subcontractor, that relationship is done. And you may face some legal action from your prime, depending on how egregious your action is. But more often than not, they'll just uh, they'll just sever that relationship, find a company to replace you for whatever service you were doing, or they may just do it themselves. But that relationship with that prime contractor is done. And then you have termination for convenience, just like for what we talked about with the primes. Yeah, for the prime contractors with the relationship with the government agency. I also want to say federal because that is my bias, but let's just say government agency. Um, if the government needs to terminate that contract for some reason outside of performance, they'll terminate for convenience. And you may see a similar action here with the prime rolling down that to the sub, terminating that contract for convenience. So I hope this was helpful. I just wanted to answer some of those questions that I get often for folks that are new to the space. What's the difference between prime contracting and subcontracting? It really speaks to how close you are to the procuring organization. Prime is direct, subcontractors are indirect, and there could be a tiered subcontracting relationship. So, hope that was helpful. Please, go back and watch some other videos. Smash the subscribe button, like, and leave me a comment, and definitely share. And I look forward to seeing you in future videos.